Red Sox beat writer for the Boston Globe, Julian McWilliams, was actually at the airport when Chaim Bloom and the rest of the front office reps found out that Xander Bogaerts was officially signing with the Padres. He talked about that and much more in this episode of the Locked On Red Sox podcast.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Jake Ignaszewski, and in this episode, we were joined by Red Sox beat writer for the Boston Globe, Julian McWilliams, who was actually at the gate in the airport when Chaim Bloom and the rest of the Red Sox front office reps found out that Xander Bogaerts was officially signing with the San Diego Padres. And Julian spoke about that encounter and much more. We are here with Red Sox beat writer from the Boston Globe, Julian McWilliams. So how's the offseason going so far, Julian?
It's going well. I know outside of the, Red Sox fans is unfortunate Xander news. I think that, for me personally, it's going well. Get some time down with my family and stuff like that, and the whole nine. But just in general for the Red Sox, obviously they have a lot ahead of them. I know I just saw that Christian Vasquez signed with the Twins, so that's another one off the board. So we'll see what happens.
And do you feel like sort of the outcry of fans getting upset? I mean, I know I was upset when I first saw the news, but I'm just curious from your point of view. Do you think that there might be unfairly criticizing not only the front office but the owners for not only the Xander signing in San Diego, but forgetting about some of the Kenley Jansen signings, the Yoshida signing, and just curious your viewpoint on that.
No, I think they have a right to be upset. Obviously, they have the Red Sox have the highest ticket price in all of baseball amongst all the 30 teams. So it's obviously not a small market. And then when you consider they lost Mookie, to free agency because essentially they lowballed him during the season and during that time. And then he ended up getting, a little bit getting more or settling sort of in the middle at the 365 mark. And then they absolutely lowball Xander and, lose him. So, and the Xander situation was a little bit different, I think, because he was always looking, to re-sign with the Red Sox. He always intimated that he wanted to be with the Red Sox. Whereas Mookie was sort of this guy that would in fairness, wanted to, rightfully so, get to market and see what his value was. So ultimately, I think the Red Sox not playing their totally misreading the market and misreading what his market would be. We talk about that 4 for 90 number that they offered him in the offseason. I mean, during the spring training, that sort of was what did them in, I think, to ultimately him moving on to a new team. Because then you allow him to get to market, and then his market ended up being completely different than I think what we all expected. So I think that's what sort of put things in perspective for him, and it was an offer that he couldn't leave on the table.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So to answer your question, I think the outcry, if you're looking at Boston, you look at these are homegrown players. You look at everything like that. I think fans have a rightful reason to be upset because. I mean, this is a person that wanted to be here, and it sort of points to say, okay, what is our future? Because they made it seem like it was about the luxury tax. They got under the luxury tax, and then you still don't retain your homegrown players. So the vision going forward is sort of murky, I think, for the Red Sox.
I think that's one thing fans, and I know we definitely talked about it on this podcast throughout the season. We're questioning throughout the year, and now there's even more questions with Bogey gone, is what is the plan? What's the reasoning for this? And you brought up the luxury tax and everything like that, but I think especially with the Lester situation, and we've also seen some other contracts not work out so well, but especially being able to secure the homegrown talent is just so important, not only for the sustainability of the organization being able to win year after year, but also being able to keep the fans happy at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what I think if you go back, they had their lowest ticket sales last year in this ownership's I think 21-year ownership of the team. So I mean that goes to tell you what the direction is going. And secondly, not only does it put them more pressure on them for them to re-sign Devers, if you're Devers, obviously money talks and everything. I think if they offer him something that, that's his worth, obviously I think he'll sign it. I think his relationship and they don't sign Xander, they're going to lose Devers. Not quite. Like if they offer him, 350, 400 million or whatever, I think that will sort of smooth things over. But, you're looking at the negotiations now and they're off with this too. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're sort of putting him in a position where, I think they offered him the Austin Riley deal. That seems to be, what the Red Sox see him as. And granted, personally speaking, I think he's probably in that range worth that. However, if you're Chaim Bloom in the Red Sox, you got to give him whatever he wants, because not only did you let Mookie walk, you let Xander walk. So, I mean, you have to spend that money on somebody to keep this vision of trying to build at least around Devers a part of the conversation.
Exactly. And it doesn't help that Bloom ultimately ended up saying at the beginning of the offseason that Xander is the plan A. And especially, with seeing how everything unfolded and now, continuing to hear sort of how the team found out, a few days maybe prior than when it was released to the public. But from what you were able to see, because you were actually at the airport in the gate when the Red Sox front office saw the report of Xander ultimately officially signing with the Padres. I'm curious sort of what the energy was like, not only from Chaim Bloom's perspective, but also just the overall perspective of the Red Sox front office that you saw there.
I think it was partially in part like, I know a lot of the fans reach on the, being stunned part. And I think part of that had to be with Xander, with me being in the airport, it's like, gosh, this reporter's in the airport and I have to be able to, I have to talk to this guy. So I think that's sort of was the part of the stunned piece that I was talking about. But in conjunction with that, I think there's also the piece of like, look, I mean, yeah, they didn't, they knew this was coming down the pipeline and that ultimately he was going to sign with another club. But when it happens, it's still a lot different. There's still some shock that goes into that, saying like, wow, this guy's not going to be a part of our organization. And not only he's not going to be a part of our organization, we have to then go explain it to the media. I have to, hear the backlash that's going to come from, Boston Sports Radio, which, sort of drives the market. So there are a lot of things that go into being stunned versus him just losing out on Bogaerts. I think it was everything that came after that led to him being like, okay, this is a reality that I'm have to deal with. And this is the reality that this is sort of the bed that I made. And now I'm going to have to sleep in it. So I think, the overall, it was an uncomfortable scene. I think just from the perspective that it just happened, I happened to be there, which I'm sure that I'm the last person Bloom wanted to see was a person of the media. And then, then he feels like he has to answer to it to some degree. So there was a mix of shock, stunned, uncomfortable energy, I guess, amongst all of them. And ultimately it came down to, Xander not being a part of the organization any longer and what comes after that.
And I'm curious sort of how you went about it, because you brought up the shocked factor and he probably wasn't expecting anybody from the Red Sox media to be there. And so I'm guessing you just went up to him. Hi, this is Julian McWilliams from the Boston Globe. Can I ask you about Xander signing with the Padres? While I was reading the article, I was just thinking in my mind, how did he do that?
Yeah, so it's funny. So I actually saw him in the TSA line. He was actually right in front of me. And then it's not baseball time, so it's you kind of want to give those guys their space, and for me, I want to get my space as well. So, but then they went to the Delta. Well, I was in the Delta Sky Club first, and then all of a sudden you see Chaim, come in afterwards, and then after that, he went to go sit with the rest of the front office that was sitting sort of in this outdoor area. I don't say outdoor, but like this outside area, outside of like the actual bar area. with all these like leather chairs and stuff. So I was sitting in the actual sort of the cafeteria area, and I saw the news break, and then I saw Chaim. Then I peeked out, the door, and I saw Chaim sitting out there, and I was like, I got to ask him a question. So I went up to him and I asked, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And he said, I don't want to comment on it. And then he sort of thought back about it. He's like, "Give me a minute. I'll talk to you about it at the gate." And so I'm waiting for him by the gate. And so then I see him walk up. The rest of the front office guys walk ahead of him. And he keeps, he says, "Give me a minute" again. And you just kind of see him just staring there. And I'm just waiting. It's not like I'm spectating, trying to just like his body language. He's literally right in front of me. I'm like, Is he ready yet? Is he ready yet? And it was kind of this awkward, this awkward feeling, because it's like, here I am just waiting for this guy. And I'm like, what is he looking at? What is he staring at? And so, and then finally, after probably about 5-6 minutes, he said, "Okay, I'm ready to talk now." And there was a lot of what do you call, like, pregnant pauses and his answers. He thought for a long time. You could tell that this was something that he was, although he was expecting. It was a sort of the having to speak on it right afterwards is probably something that he ideally didn't want to do.
Right. I hope that you are enjoying my conversation with Julian McWilliams, but I just want to take a second to talk to you about Simply Safe. So at Locked On Red Sox, we believe home should be where you and your family feel safest, especially over the holidays. This season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security system, Simply Safe. And right now, Simply Safe is offering Locked On Red Sox listeners 40% off a new security system. But don't put this off. I don't know about you, but I'm somebody who really cares about their home security. And I want to do everything possible to not only keep my belongings inside my house, but also my house as protected as possible. And Simply Safe was actually named the best home security system of 2022 by US News and World Report, which is their 3rd year in a row. And makes sense because in an emergency, they have 24/7 professional monitoring agents that use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get higher priority police response. And they also have HD security cameras for inside and out with smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real. So don't miss your chance to save big on your favorite security system. Get 40% off any new Simply Safe at simplysafe.com/lockdownmlb today. That's simplysafe.com/lockdownmlb. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Now let's get back to my conversation with Julian. That makes sense. And it was funny to see on Twitter, Chris Cotillo saying, "Damn, I got the wrong flight there." But I mean, at the same time, I bet you were thinking in your mind, like, at the end of the day, like, this is my job. This is, he's right in front of me. This is something that I have to report on. And especially with something as big as the Bogaerts news, it was just something that you had to do. Makes sense.
Yeah, and I almost was like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And then, because it's uncomfortable for all parties, right? Because it's like, I'm walking up and you see, everybody's staring at you like, oh gosh, like, is he really going to come over here? And what they're thinking, and they know that what they're thinking. So it's not necessarily the most ideal place for me. Trust me, that's not although it turned out to be, I guess, one of my better stories. I think that's the way in which it happened. There's a lot of sort of emotions and feelings and questions of your, on both sides that you had to sift through to ultimately get to that. So, because I mean, this wasn't like it was like Christian Vasquez, right? Like if the Vasquez news dropped, he signed with another team, even if he finished out the season with the Red Sox, like, that's different. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no, this is Xander Bogaerts, who the front office and ownership said, was their first priority. And ultimately, he was more of a priority for the Padres than he was for the Red Sox.
Yeah, and it really showed, I guess, in the offers, that especially the ones that have come out recently, and that obviously puts a massive hole at shortstop for the Red Sox going into 2023. Obviously, you can move Story over to shortstop, TK to second base, or just grab a shortstop in the free agency market or through trade. But I'm curious, you thinking in your mind, the Red Sox roster that they're going to run out on opening day, who do you think is going to be in that middle infield?
I have a feeling that if they don't get any of the bigger guys in the market, and there's not that many left at shortstop, be it like Swanson, which they haven't really been in on, or Correa, which they reportedly haven't really been in on. I think Trevor Story is moving over to shortstop. I think Trevor Story wants to play shortstop. Although I question that. You know what I mean? If you look at his metrics in terms of him being able to throw the baseball, it's they're not good. His arms, clearly something is wrong with his arm. And I saw it even back to last year where I'll never forget, we were in Atlanta and he was warming up with Bobby Dahlbeck. And I thought it was like, I'm not even kidding, I thought it was like the ball boy or something like that. Because, I mean, that's just how, his arm is just, there's something wrong. Like there's reports about his arm, him having a partially torn UCL or whatever. I think there's a lot more to his arm than people make out to be, because if you even look at the metrics, I think he ranked in like the 8% in velocity or something like that according to Baseball Savant. So that's a problem. I mean, in terms of footwork and everything like that, I think he's obviously the better shortstop than Xander, but the arm doesn't play at all anymore. And I think the Red Sox going to have to figure out a way to fill up that position. But again, like it goes. I think Chaim sort of overthinks things, and if you're the Red Sox, and the thing about Dave Dombrowski, if he needed a shortstop, he went out and got a shortstop. If he needed a second baseman, he got a second base. If he needed a starter, he went out and got a starter. Like, he wasn't trying to, build with all these guys that sort of are off the waiver wire, or sort of even like a Kike Hernandez, who I don't even think is an everyday player, right? I think Kike is better in the role in which he can sort of maneuver between outfield and infield. I think that's where he brings the most value. When you put him in an everyday role, I think he leaves him more chances to get exposed. So I think you're looking at a team that sort of has to put the pieces to the puzzle together, and they make things a lot harder than what it needs to be. And ultimately, I think if you don't get those top two shortstops, be it Swanson or Correa that's left on the market, it's going to be Trevor Story as the shortstop for next season.
And if it's not Kike or Arroyo at second base, who do you think is the most logical fit?
I think it's going to be Kike or Arroyo. I mean, I think it's going to be. I think they would probably want to go with Arroyo, but the thing with Arroyo is, can he stay healthy? Right? You look at over the course of 162 games, he's been a guy he's a good player, but the question of him has always been health. So if you can trade for a guy, I don't know the second base market off the top of my head, but ultimately I think that's something they're gonna have to do. But I don't think that in reality, I don't know if the Trevor Story at shortstop thing is going to work out. But I can say with confidence that there's a strong chance that he is the shortstop on opening day.
That makes sense. And I was talking to Chris Cotillo yesterday sort of about how it was unfortunate with the Xander announcement, how essentially 5 or 6 hours after the Red Sox made a huge deal for, Yoshida, Kenley Jansen, that same exact day, that, if those two signings happened after Xander, it would be a completely different tone from Red Sox fans and maybe a little bit more excitement about those signings. But especially with what's come out about Yoshida over these past few days, with everybody, beating down on the Sox, essentially how scouts are saying that they paid, more than, half of what they really should have, or what any other team would have wanted to. And 45 minutes after he was posted, just snatched right up. But curious from the people that you've spoken to about the new outfielder for the Red Sox, or DH, Masahiro Yoshida.
Yeah, the DH part of it is interesting, right? I think that ultimately they're going to have to go out there and get another outfielder too, because although he has elite bat to ball skills, I think like what, 8% strikeout rate or something crazy like that. He had more walks and strikeouts last year in the Japan League, which is, that's no slouch. That league is, it's not the major leagues, but I mean, if it's the closest thing, if you would say like to a major league, it's probably like comparable to, say, if there was like a level 4A or something like that. But obviously it's different over here, and the people I've spoken to, he's not that. He only plays left field. There's no chance he can play sort of the centers and rights, and particularly not at Fenway, where you're looking at a situation where that wall and everything else can burn you. Just ask anybody who's played that. It's not an easy place to play, especially not right field. So I think you're looking at a guy that's limited, in the outfield, and maybe he'll possibly even be limited on the road. At home, I think that's a player that can, play well in left field, because essentially you just have the short left field wall, the green monster, and sort of can play it off that, and there's not much room for him to maneuver. However, again, that goes with, if you had Jackie Bradley Jr. in center field who can cover up that stuff, that's a little bit different than, even Kike Hernandez, who I know grades well as an outfielder, but if you watch him over time, you're looking at a guy he's not Jackie. Let's just say that. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of work that has to go into, them being able to fit him into the fold. But again, I think, they got themselves an elite bat, possibly a leadoff hitter that they haven't had since Mookie. They've struggled in the leadoff spot from having to tinker with Kike there, Jarren Duran there. I think Franchi Cordero batted leadoff at one point, if I'm not mistaken. So you're looking at a team that might have their leadoff batter. However, I think you still need to go out there and get another outfielder.
I hope that you are enjoying my conversation with Julian McWilliams, but I just want to take a second to talk about betonline.net, which is your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. We've got all at betonline.net. Also, if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now let's get back into my conversation with Julian. Yeah, and then there's the big question on could Verdugo potentially be on the move? How are you really going to?
I think that's a real possibility. I think
think so?
I think that's a real possibility in terms of there are people within the organization that do question his level of commitment, and I can assure you that he's been in sort of these places where you're looking at a guy that that shows up to can show up to work late sometimes, and in terms of there have been times where we've been to the ballpark, the media before him. I'm sorry for the noise in the background.
You're okay, man.
But yeah, so I think that's actually a real thing, in terms of in terms of him being on the move. Even if you talk to the Dodgers people, the whole reason he's not on the Dodgers is because of his makeup.
Makes sense.
And because of the makeup question. So I think that if you look at that, and he's a good player, he's a really good player. And he's a great quote, great with the media. But I think the reality is there's some people within the organization that have gone cold on him.
Makes sense. And then one last thing for you. One other guy that I brought up is Kenley Jansen, and we haven't seen his deal officially be announced yet. And I'm curious from your perspective why that might be, and also what guys you could see be taken off the 40-man roster in order to accommodate, not only Yoshida but Jansen as well.
The Kenley move, the Kenley thing is going to happen really soon. I can assure you that it'll be made official within the next couple of days. So what was your second part of your question?
What guys do you think could be taken off the 40-man roster in order to accommodate, not only Yoshida but also Jansen as well?
Off the top of my head, let me think. Run down the list of pitchers. What is it? Caleb Ward.
You also got Zach Kelly as well. I'm trying to think of who else, because they also had a good amount of guys before the Rule 5 draft. I would be very surprised if they took off Brandon Walter or Ceddanne Rafaela.
No. Those guys aren't freshmen. I think Ort's an interesting one, right? Because you did see his velocity tick up toward the end of the year last year, which is like, who the hell is this guy? Like he started throwing like 99, 100. I think he had a couple of hundreds. I would look at I don't have the 40-man right in front of me. But if you look at I guess like you said, like the Zach Kelly guy, Ort is interesting. I don't know how they use him,
Connor
but I think they'll
Siebold's
give
another
him
one. Hoy
Connor.
Park.
That's a candidate. That's definitely a candidate. That's definitely I would say Connor Siebold is definitely a candidate. He's been sort of a disappointment, I think, for the Red Sox this year. Coming over, I know they like his stuff, but it doesn't translate necessarily to results. I would look for somebody like a Connor Siebold to, possibly be a person that they, I guess, move on from. So, I mean, look, it's not necessarily like a lot of people are safe, within that pitching roster. I think you're looking at a lot of mid-level, I guess, starters and relievers a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times. And I think that's what they've run into over the years is like they lack that horse, right? I know
Right.
Garrett Whitlock is one. I would say Tanner Houck it has the potential to be one, but we never got to see him really in either, in either role because, one, he was hurt as a reliever, and then they moved him from the starter's position after, X amount of starts because they needed him in the bullpen. So you're looking at a lot of guys that I think that are just your mid-level guys, and I think that's the problem that the Red Sox run into. Yes, you had the 2021 season, but you kind of
Mm-hmm.
caught lightning in the bottle. And
Right.
I think Chaim got a little bit cocky in terms of going out and getting the Austin Davises of the world and thinking, or the Jay Beekmans and thinking that would help you. And ultimately, they were just left-handers who had a heartbeat like like the rest of them. So
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at a situation where they're going to have to get somebody and make some big splash. I think to let the fans know and to let the media know that they're serious about winning,
Right.
and they haven't done that yet.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm very curious to see what they do over these next 2 months. That's one thing that I really tried to speak to when we were talking about the Xander departures. Teams got 2 months to make lots of different moves, fill in these holes, and build up our confidence back up to be excited about watching the 2023 Red Sox. But greatly appreciate all your insight and also the time as well, Julian. For anybody that wants to check out any of your articles, your Twitter, or anything like that, just to support you, where can they find all that stuff?
I'm usually just even if that, I'm much of a Twitter guy. It's by Julian Mac on Twitter. So I'm I don't tweet that much, so you probably it's not that much news coming from my side unless it's especially not in the off season. But if you want to find me, it's by Julian Mac, and obviously, and these cabs are going off again, and then by Julian Mac on Twitter, by Julian Mac on Instagram, and obviously on the Boston Red. So that's it.
Perfect.
Sorry about the beats in the back.
Yeah, all good, man. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I hope that you did enjoy my conversation with Julian McWilliams. Got a little bit more clarity on how the Red Sox front office not only found out, but also what they need to do in order to get fans excited again for the 2023 Red Sox. But we're going to do everything possible throughout the rest of this offseason and also leading into the 2023 season to get you excited and also as updated as possible 5 days a week on this podcast. So we really appreciate everybody making Locked On Red Sox their first listen of every single day. Now make your second listen Locked On Sports Today, from the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports. Go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today. It's available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you want to stay updated with not only the guests that we might be having on in the future, but also some topics that we're going to be speaking about, or if you just want to stay updated about your favorite team, the Boston Red Sox, make sure to go over and follow Locked On Red Sox on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. You can also follow myself over there. It's at Jake Iggy. And also my co-host Lauren. It's three laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But as always, we greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. We hope everybody has a great rest of their day. We'll end it how we always end it. Let's go Sox. Peace.